So in this presentation, I will give you some tips on how to take effective note-taking. Now, for this presentation, we are specifically talking about notes when you are reporting client information. This is not about taking college notes, so you can look elsewhere if that's what you're interested in. So when we think about a good note, we can verify that it has certain key qualities. It usually shows information about something. It may have observations, impressions, thoughts, or feelings about what is being observed. There may be notable concerns to highlight. Then, towards the end of the note, there is typically a next step. For this, we will call it the plan, intervention, or direction. By creating a note that has this information, it makes it very readable, understandable, and applicable to another individual who may come across it later. This is necessary, especially when we're working with clients and recording crucial information about our work with them, as well as the status of whatever their situation is. We want to make sure that we make it very straightforward and easy to understand so that if someone else were to read it, they would know exactly what was witnessed and observed, as well as what the next steps were. In many ways, writing a note is like telling a story. We must make sure that anyone reading it understands what occurred and what the next steps are. This might seem complicated at first, which is why we can utilize something very simple and straightforward called SOAP note taking. So, SOAP is an acronym that stands for Subjective, Objective, Assessment, Plan. This acronym essentially shows what is necessary for every note about a client. I will go through each letter and provide examples to help further your understanding of this acronym and how you can use it when taking client notes. So the first letter of SOAP is the S, which stands for subjective. This is the information that is told to you when you meet with a client and you're trying to discuss and figure out what their needs are, what are their concerns, whatever information they divulge to you would go in the section of the SOAP note. But then, since we aren't writing a book here, we still want to make sure it's brief and concise. We must make it focus on what the actual problem is that the client is facing. Now, an example of this is if we look at the character Charlie Brown, there's a specific episode when Charlie Brown is very distraught. He comes to Lucy and she's trying to ask questions to figure out what is upsetting him. Now, if Lucy was to write a SOAP note, all the information Charlie Brown shared would go into her subjective section. Ultimately, Charlie Brown and Lucy together realize that he's afraid of everything. Lucy would then write in her note, "The client appears to be afraid of everything." Of course, she could elaborate on what this means for the reader, but this just gives you an idea of how simple it is to apply this note-taking process. Now, the next letter in SOAP is the O, which stands for objective. This is observations, appearance, and behavior that we may witness with a client. Now for this, we are going to utilize an example found within Winnie the Pooh, where we can focus on a new client's behavior. So we see Eeyore, and we can make observations about his appearance and his behavior. He appears very depressed. He often walks with his head down. He speaks very softly. Now we can see how Eeyore's behavior is affected by the circumstances when he loses his tail. In response to the problem, he shares with you, "I will just learn to live with it." The observation that we can make about Eeyore is that the client appears to be depressed about loss of tail. We can also make observations about his physical appearance, his behavior, and the way he looks, the way he dresses. All of those things we can also include in our SOAP note in the objective section. Now, the last two letters I will go over together. After we have gathered all of our information about the client and what the presenting needs are, we can create our own assessment of the situation and devise our plan. This can be our action plan, our next step we will take in assisting the client with the problem. So if we look at our examples, in the first clip when we saw Lucy and Charlie Brown, the action plan that was devised is that if Charlie Brown can get involved with a Christmas production, he will feel more ownership and less fear of everything. He comes to this conclusion from talking with Lucy and realizing that his fear is stemmed from not understanding Christmas. So in the second example we used, Eeyore decided he will live with having a broken tail. But his friends step in and devise a plan to help him by using their creative ideas to create a new tail for him. Now, these examples are simple considering they're based off of pretty small problems. But you can also see that in these examples how easy it is to use the SOAP note-taking procedure to record information for client notes. With utilizing this method, you can make sure your notes are concise, specific, and understandable. Thanks for listening to this presentation on SOAP note-taking. You can look at the references listed below if you want more information about how to utilize this method to be able to really do great client notes that are effective, easy to understand, and really help with showing what a client's problem is and what your action steps were. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment box. That's all I have for now, so thanks for watching.